Greetings, this is Tarot Illumination. It's Wednesday night here. It's the 26th of July. And I've got a little chart for everybody somewhere. I just had it. We'll come to that in a moment. Just wanted to say I'm sorry I wasn't there on the 23rd. That was Sunday. That's the day where we normally do our Sunday Night Live thrills and spills with mini tarot readings and a bit of astrology thrown in, and people, both friends and strangers, trust themselves to the mysteries of the tarot and the unknown and the esoteric wonders of astrology. Woo. Anyway, I got sick. Saturday, I guess the 22nd, I got sick. Started to feel really weird and unhealthy and miserable. It started here and went up to here, my head, my face, my eyes and everything. Didn't know what it was. Started getting feverish. Sunday, couldn't cope at all. Temperatures bouncing up and down. It went up to 102, which is really high for me. I'm normally 97.5. And then it bounced down all the way to 95.5. So that's like a 7-degree swing, just like it was really hard to deal with. Also, a lot of issues with feeling very weak and fragile and like dizzy and so on. Anyway, fast forward today, it's been resolved. Turns out it was a sinus infection of some kind triggered by perhaps pet dander or mold or fungus or dust in the air. To me it's a very I have a lot of problems with the air here and also the heat. I have very serious problems with the heat. So just combine it all, and it's anybody could get a situation like this. But with my other health conditions, just a little sinus head cold turned into a big problem. Now it's very weird with the timing, because on Monday morning my temperature was way down and I thought, oh, I'm getting better. I felt better, felt a bit stronger. So I went off to one of my cancer treatments. It's a new thing we're doing. That went okay. I got back and I started to feel really, really gross again. So I think that was kind of good luck. And when I got to that clinic, they didn't ask for my temperatures, my my status with injections and things like that. They didn't ask about masks or anything. It was just, here, get in, get your treatment. Thank you very much. It went very well. So anyway, the point, what I'm trying to say is I completely missed the big event. To me, the big event was the 23rd, and I was talking about it days or weeks in advance to mark your calendar because of that big, fat, highly unusual Grand Cross. So I'll illustrate that in just a second. And what I'm going to do here is going to do a little bit of a slightly personalized backstory so that people can understand that this affects everybody. Okay, let's go over here. So let's see, there we were on the 21st. So we actually did a show. I think I did a live. Maybe I did a live or a recording. I can't remember. But anyway, it went out there and I did this Astrodoodle. And the weird thing about this Astrodoodle is that it's not normal, because the astrologers don't normally show this axis as if it's a planet, if it's planets. But the degrees are so acute and they're so relevant to this actual axis here that I couldn't help but notice it. And I thought, oh my, this is going to be very serious. And lo and behold, it was very serious. I looked at the 10-day window before the 23rd and like a 10-day window after the 23rd. And that was my timeline for putting this aspect right in the center. And lo and behold, for a few days leading up to this moment, there were multiple crises happening in the world that were being really, really amplified. at the personal level and at the global level. And then the crises happened, and then a few days afterwards, the crises are playing out. Just like, it's like clockwork, And so the crises, I put it over here. I made a few notes here. The 29-degree crisis point, the anaretic degree, sometimes 29.5 degrees. It gets very extreme. So Pluto's at 29 degrees roughly, and back on the 23rd, which I don't have, but it's very similar, the Sun would have been at 29 degrees. The South Node would have been 29 degrees. The North Node would have been 29 degrees. So 29, 29, 29, 29. Or even more, 29.5, 29.5, 29.5, 29.5. That's a very serious crisis point. Excuse me. Anyway, we've moved on. And this is what my Astrodoodle looks like for today. Let me just mark the date here. I forgot. It's the 26th, July 2023. And what I've done is I've kept this axis here and this axis here. This is the Sun-Pluto opposition. This is the South Node, North Node axis in deep, hard squares. Okay, these angles are very acute here. Here, 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 here. Very hard 90-degree angles. Now, I didn't put it in this chart because I'm hoping you can see it clearly enough. This is a grand cross. Okay? Some people call it a grand square. It's both. This is the cross. It's one of the most stressful things you can have in astrology. So let me go to a few personal things. I picked out some, like Scorpio types, for example. I made a very, very crude doodle. And I made a crude doodle for Cancerian types. Basically taking this and overlaying it with a bit of this to bring it up to date and to where we are right now. So the same Grand Cross for the Scorpio types would look something like this. I put Scorpio on the horizon. You see what I'm getting at? There's the Scorpio horizon first house. There's Taurus. And so the opposition here, if you could see this, the Libra North Node would be right there at the 29-degree mark of the 12th house Libra for the Scorpio types. The 29-degree mark for the 6th house Aries for the Scorpio types. So this axis here is heavily stressed. This axis here is heavily stressed. For the Scorpio types, the Sun is right up there on the midheaven, and the Pluto's right down there. So this is the biggest polarity that you can have in Western astrology. Sun opposite Pluto. So it's like, the way I read it is kind of like identity crisis. Who are you in your solar self? Like, who am I really relative to what is evolving in your soul? What is changing? What is dying inside of you in order to give birth to what is evolving inside of you? It's a constant process, but when you get this opposition, it's very amplified and very clear. And you only get it, I think, was it once a year? Yeah, it would only happen once a year when you get Sun opposite Pluto. So it's a rare moment to have some wonderful chance at deep personal insight. So what I'm doing is taking this axis here, the axis of crisis point, and it's amplified and multiplied because the two are happening simultaneously. So I just made a couple notes. So for the midheaven, think of the Sun in the outer world, transiting here over the next few weeks. Think of Pluto just sitting here for the next few weeks. So what's happening at the foundations of your world? In other words, the home, your place of stability, where you sleep, where you have security, where you would perhaps eat and have food and safety and comfort and security. What's going on in there? relative to what's going on in the outer world. How are you presenting yourself to the outer world? This would be 10th house energy. Are you being your most full, responsible, like solid, reliable self that you could possibly be? Meanwhile, you might be like desperately trying to change and evolve and shift at the level, the base level of your home. Like, where have you come from? Where have you going? What would what is dying off in your home life, and what is being born in your home life? Simultaneously, this axis here would be about health and sickness. 12th house would be the house of hidden enemies and sickness, things that are unhealthy over here. And over here, this would be what are we going to do about it? So the Aries energy would be prioritizing the self. How is the Scorpio type going to prioritize the self so that the self is not, let's say, the self is not shackled. The self is not unable to be the self because of deep immersion in relationship dynamics, some of which might be very comfortable and status quo and you cherish them, but also are showing signs of being outgrown or unhealthy or need to be put in a secondary position while you take care of yourself. Make sure that you are healthy and as strong as you can be so that the ones that you do care for, you can offer the best of yourself for the significant others who might be suffering. Okay? And all of that's happening simultaneously. Over here, Cancerian types. It's a completely different spread. We put Cancer on the horizon here. So the Sun-Pluto polarity is over here. 29 degrees. And the nodal polarity is over here. Aries North Node. Now this axis transit is going this way while the Sun and Pluto are going that way. Okay? So it's a different storyline. I'm basically like kind of calling it out as an identity crisis. Are you prioritizing yourself over others in a very selfish way? Or are you doing that out of desperation? Or are you doing it in a very responsible way? See, good question. Versus, on the contrary, the Pluto energy over here, what is the significance of your significant others? Serious question. What is the significance of your serious others, dear Cancerians? What is the role that they play in your life? What is the role that you play in their lives? Why are you here for each other? You are transforming them. They are transforming you. What does that look like? Is it causing you a lot of stress? Are you feeling invigorated and understanding like this is very powerful and meaningful for you? At the same time, the North Node journey transit is asking you, whether you have an Aries North Node, it doesn't matter. All I'm suggesting is that with the transit, with the Aries North Node here, it's going to be transiting your 10th house, like a career, status quo, your purpose, your meaning, the legacy that you're leaving in this world as you live through your life in the most responsible, strategic ways that you possibly can. Have you been neglecting that for a long time while you prioritize, relationships at home that might be idealized and that might be effectively redundant or obsolete or perhaps unsalvageable or still valuable but need to be observed and dealt with from a more like rational business-like perspective. Like, how can you possibly be the best person for those significant others if you don't make the best of yourself first? So that really means literally making the best of yourself first in the outer world, as if you, dear Cancer, realize, like, I have to be like a very responsible citizen, a business person, or a leader in my field. And that usually means being out and about. It might mean running a business from home a bit, but it means having to stretch yourself outside of having a sense of coziness and stability in the home that might be actually limiting you from moving on. You might have to give up certain relationships in order to be your best self. It doesn't mean the relationships are dead or over. It just means they have to be reprioritized. Maybe in terms of time, energy, and space. How much time, energy, and space do you share with a significant other, or with certain significant others, and so on. All right. Anyway, I made some notes there. I'll just leave that. I don't need to talk about that right now. We just talked about that. I want to go back to here. Just want a quick note over here, just reminding everybody that we have Venus retrograde now, as well as Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay, so there's Venus is retrograde, money issues, and we have a big fat Yod, finger of God. Can you see that in yellow? Can you see that? Can you see that? That's a finger of God. That's like a big flashlight pointing over here towards the issue of money and what's not working with money, and the relationship of yourself with money and money with you. There are issues, there are things going on in the world of money which in some ways are very, very frightening right now, as the world of money is being ripped apart and turned upside down by the elites for their benefit at your cost, your expense. Here's the same chart. This is the 26th, but this aspect is still very strong. The sun is actually over here, like in 3 degrees, but that's still a very tight opposition with Pluto. So, on a more global stage, we've got this aspect over here. 2nd house and 8th house are heavily lit up right now. It's very quick because the moon is so quick. But these are the money houses, okay? I should mark that over here. Money houses. Okay? Now, for the last year and a half, we've been going through the money houses, and the whole subject of global finance has become mainstream, okay? The massive upheavals and implosions that are happening worldwide with global finance. Think of the United States, interest rates, inflation, runaway inflation. Think of China, collapsing economy from the inside out. Think of the European banks kind of imploding. Think of these huge banks imploding. There's so many freaky things going on with the world banking system. Money. Now the nodes just moved over here. South node Libra. Okay, so there's the Libra transit over here. And the Aries North node transit over here. So that's going to be going for a year and a half. This is going to be stuck right here. This is going to shift and change. So this is going to be very tight for some time. All right. Now you're not going to see this anywhere else. Okay, there aren't any astrologers or charts that are going to mark this thing out. But from my perspective, my observations, what I am witnessing is major crises points. Maybe I should just put it on notes as I'm going right here, right now. We've probably talked about these things before, but it's now in mainstream news. Right at the very, very top of the global financial system, we have the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS. All the global central banks move their money back and forth to each other through the BIS using the SWIFT system. This whole system is antiquated and it is falling apart, and it has become heavily weaponized, especially by the United States against things like Russia, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, and so on. This is shifting and changing. And what they're trying to do is turn this into an instantaneous process instead of taking a few days, where each account, okay, each of the central banks, okay, for all these central banks to interact with each other, which is what they do, and all the global trading banks on Wall Street with all the other trading banks in every other country, they're doing trillions of dollars of transactions every day, and they have to move back and forth, winners and losers, money exchanging, money in, money out, back and forth. It all goes through here, and it's antiquated and slow. The new system is coming out where it's going to be instantaneous within seconds. For the old system, all these banks and all these countries that are represented by the banks have to hold massive reserves of each currency in which they are transacting. It's sort of like having a float, you know, when you go to a craft fair or something like that and you do everything in cash, you have to have a little cash box full of, like, you know, $100 or $500 worth of cash, so that when somebody buys a piece of your artwork or, you know, brand new canned tomatoes, you can make change. They can give you cash and you can give them cash, and you have to be able to do that. So you have to hold that currency on hand. So all the central banks have to do that, and it's very expensive because all that cash sitting there in the floats is unable to transact. So those are called nostro vostro accounts. Those will become obsolete, and then the speed of money will just accelerate all over the world. The next thing is that, headed by a few other banks, but especially the United States Federal Reserve Bank, has now formally announced it is doing FedNow. This is the instantaneous version of this. It's happening right now. It is live. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of major banks and financial institutions across the world in America that are using this as of the 4th of, as of the 23rd, I believe. Or was it the 4th of July? No, I think it was the 4th. A very big day. Now, here's where it starts to get very scary, because this is all presented to the world in very professional, formal ways. It's all being announced through places like, the World Economic Forum, New York Times, Forbes, you know, so-called trustworthy, reliable, premium, prestige, high-status sources. Mainstream media. The FedNow is here and we are going to save you. Be very, very careful, because the FedNow is actually the precursor to the United States FedNow CBDC. This is the central bank digital currency. This is the snare, the death trap that is being dropped like a massive fishing net. You know, you've probably heard about it, how China sends thousands of fishing boats all over the Pacific and the Southeast Pacific over here, all over here. Lots of illegal fishing boats, and they use these massive drag nets that pull up anything out of the ocean that looks like a fish. So there's a lot of pain and suffering and wastage. But they do it, and so far nobody's really stopping them. Those nets are enormous, and they're causing massive damage across the world. Well, guess what? The same nets are being cast by every single country across the world now. They're furiously, all the countries in the world are now furiously doing everything they can to enact their own CBDCs. China is the world leader in CBDC right now, and if you know anything about China, you'll understand that it's probably one of the worst places you could be on earth right now. Their whole economy is imploding from the inside out. There's staggering poverty and implosion over there with debt financing, property, real estate, auto sales, mortgages, credit cards, everything you can imagine. And the leaders of the country have ensnared the whole place with a CBDC because everybody in China uses phones. And effectively what it amounts to is that the CBD, the Central Bank of China, whatever that's called, now has total control over you, the citizen, the single individual citizen. If the leaders over here don't like what they're doing, they can shut down your money. Like, oh, you spent too much money on travel. You said something wrong on social media. You protested against certain government practices. You refused to have a certain chemical stuck into your body. You were doing things that were bad and corrupt, trying to liberate people to freedom. We don't accept any of that. We're going to shut down your money. You cannot travel anymore. You're not allowed to buy this or that anymore. You can't go on a subway, a plane, or a bus, or a train. And so on and so on. The CBDCs are controlled through an algorithm. And it's the same thing. It's now being modeled. And thanks to these folks, the World Economic Forum, the system has propagated and been advertised and marketed, sold and bought across the whole world. And the United States now has its own version of it. It's not official yet, but I already know for a fact that Jerome Powell and the United States Federal Reserve have already hired crypto code writer techies to craft the new American CBDC. In other words, CBDC America. Now the thing is, you're not going to know this is going to happen because it's going to be implemented through just the regular banks all across America. So if you're an American watching this, there's banks all over the country. The big banks know exactly what's going on, and they're all participants in this evil scheme. Some of the smaller banks are a little more resistant. Some of them are a lot more resilient. But anyway, they are all going to be pressured to comply with the CBDC. You as the consumer, you're not going to notice anything different. You'll still have your debit card, your credit cards, car payments, mortgages, business loans, certificates of deposit, savings, business accounts, all of that usual banking stuff. But behind the scenes, behind the facade of a regular bank, will be this thing. And more people are going to start to discover, hey, wait a minute, I just went to that store to buy a certain self-defense tool, and all of a sudden my money's shut down. Well, what just happened? Hey, wait a minute, I just went out to watch a movie that was all about these really important subjects that expose some of the ugly truth about certain business practices involving little children in America. And now they have my name because they found it on my transaction card, and now I can't go grocery shopping. Oh, they stopped me from, wait a minute, I was going to go visit my friends in New York. I can't go. And so on and so on. People are being debanked. They're going to just shut your money down, take it, close it out, because they don't like you. I'm not going to go too far down that hole because the video will be, let's say, I guess called flagged or something. I've had enough problems with that. But anyway, so this is just the number one. To me, this is the number one crisis point. Is the global financial system is reaching major crisis point. Every country on earth is in a state of financial crisis right now. Every single country. The next big crises points are, of course, the China-Taiwan thing and the Russia-Ukraine thing over here. It's just escalating and expanding. There are major wars going on through all over here. I don't want to dwell too much on all this really scary negative crisis stuff, but it's accelerating and it has been amplified. Now, I guess what I want to do now is just wrap it up with the good old USA. We've reached a crisis point inside the USA. This particular aspect, hi Bubba, I'll be back soon. This particular aspect is very serious for the United States because recently Venus and Mercury transited this point. Venus and Mercury over here. Venus and Mercury were here about a month ago, and that was a crisis point. Okay, but now the Sun is here, and the American Sun was actually over here, the birth of America, lower degrees Cancer, 4th of July. But with the Sun in Cancer here, it's amplifying the natural born crisis point of the United States, which is 27 degrees Capricorn and 27 degrees Mercury in Cancer, which is all about the business and finance of America, because in the United States, that axis point goes like this. The money houses, okay? 8th house, 2nd house. So, the United States crisis point is being amplified. There's a very powerful light shining on the bedrock soul of the United States about anything and everything that is wrong with the United States at the very soul of the United States, born 250 years ago, roughly. That bright light is the Sun. It's the fiercest, most powerful opposition that we have. Sun opposite Pluto. And if you look what's happening in mainstream news, even the mainstream news can't suppress it. We have, as of today's chart here, this chart here, we have a massive crisis unfolding. Okay, remember, this was here, this is here. 5 days later, the same crisis points, okay? But now we have the Yod pointing on Mercury and Venus, which were active back here. Crisis, crisis, crisis. Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, Venus, all in retrograde. Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. I don't know if you've noticed, but to me, it seems like there is a massive crisis, identity crisis in America. Sun, identity. Where the leadership of this country, Uncle Joe and his gang, have been fully and utterly exposed for the criminals that they are. On top of that, all the criminals who are doing everything they can to cover up for Uncle Joe. Those criminals have very big names in very, very high offices around Washington. You know, things like FBI and CIA and all that stuff. So there's enough evidence to put them away, okay? So there's some bad, let's put it this way. There's a bunch of bad guys over here where everything is organized and run. And they've been fully exposed and fully outed. So the question is, what do we do? Right now there's this point of stalemate and stagnation because there's so much damning evidence that you can't block it. The mainstream media are doing everything they can to block it and shut it down because it's too terrifying for them to imagine what would happen if we actually let our Constitution do what it's supposed to do, and let the law do what it's supposed to do, let Congress do what it's supposed to do. The implications are absolutely staggering for America. This has never happened before in America. It's happening right now. At the same time, there's a real renegade, rebellious troublemaker. His very famous name. He's got very blonde, swooshy hair. And he's going through major crisis point as well, but it's just making his light and power and energy grow stronger. I've done videos about that guy specifically, but I'm not going to dwell on it right now. Well, I guess really what I'm trying to say is that this represents a crisis point, and that's what I'm seeing. I mean, I don't know if you care about these things or watch these things, because for you it might just be another day at the office, or another day at the factory, another day at school, another day in the hospital, another day at a clinic. Who knows? And all you're worried about is, oh, what's for dinner, or who's going out with who's in the movies, or there's so much free. I don't know where to start. I'm just going over the big ones that need to be put out there. So I've had my say. That's what I wanted to put out there, and I hope you get something out of this. Now, if you want, see, if I go on here, this will go on forever and ever if I get into that. So what you can do here. So right now I'm healthier than I was this morning. I'm recovering, doing quite well. Thursday, tomorrow, I'm going to be at the doctor's again. More cancer stuff, but it's going to be fine. It's going to be really, really good. They say I'm doing incredibly well. I believe that I am as well. And after that, as of Thursday evening, I'll be able to take on clients of readings again like we do. I might do a little live show, do some live mini readings, but if you want to, you can go over here. It's a great way to say thank you. If you want to say thanks to Tarot Illumination, click the donate button on the donate page. If you want to get deep into your own personal story, you can book a reading. It's on the same website, tarotillumination.com. It's really simple stuff. So there you have it. I'm not going to run through it all again. It's just repeating myself. So I'll just sign out over here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you get something out of this. I guess the idea is, please make the most of this. This is a crisis. I know so many people who are going through crises right now. Somebody just killed themselves. A few people have died. Major hospital heart attack issues. I have a family friend who just had a major heart attack, and I have a member of my family who just had a major heart attack, and so on and so on. Pretty much everybody I know here seems to be going through some major crisis. I'm going through my own in my own little mini way, but I feel like I'm kind of ahead of it because I'm aware of the crises points, so I don't feel as though I'm being crushed by the crises. I'm navigating. I'm just simply navigating in a very kind of neutral manner, as if I was like in a traffic situation. I just had to get through the traffic. Like, that's tricky. Let's go over here. Let's try over there. Anyway, so if you are going through a major crisis point and you want to get some light on the subject and figure out how to handle it, we can work on that. I'll give you, get you a reading or something, okay? Anyway, thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Love thyself. Remember, you're number one. Bye-bye.